Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking to George Norris. George is a coach, a mentor, an author, and a keynote speaker. He's written 6 books about leadership and has coached many business leaders worldwide on leadership and how to successfully lead big organizations. What we want to particularly talk to George about today is how to transition from corporate to your own business. So let's jump into it.
With 30 years' experience in auto logistics and state-of-the-art locations in 5 major Australian cities, Precar Fleet Services are a premier all-in-one solutions provider for commercial vehicle fleet operators, leasing companies and original equipment manufacturers. Please visit precar.com.au and click on the link to Fleet Services.
George, thanks for joining us today. Great to have you on the show. We're speaking about a very interesting topic today, is jumping from corporate into your own business and becoming an entrepreneur. It's quite a daunting task, and you have a lot of experience in this area. Can you share some of your understandings and how you coach and mentor leaders who want to take that big next step after corporate?
Well, I can, John, and I'll probably couch it in terms about what happened to me, because I was 16 years at an international oil company called Celtics Oil, and I jumped off into space, I'd call it, becoming, say, a business astronaut. That's what I think, because when you start your business from a corporate, the risk factor's fairly high, emotionally, spiritually, financially, physically, in a lot of ways, actually. When you do it, you have to have conviction. The reason, and there's a reason for doing it. Either you've been looked over or you're going to be shifted somewhere you don't want to go. In that case, that was my case. I was going to be shifted up to another location in the country with a young family, and in fact not paid for the job. I was going to be a sales manager looking after about 12 people, and they weren't going to increase my salary. So I had a couple of reasons to think about what I should do. And I worked out that if I did what I knew and I believed in and I was good at and I was getting accolades for the reason they wanted to promote me, then I should have self-confidence enough to take a calculated risk. And so that's 50 years ago, John, when you believe that. I started my business in 1974 and round figures 50 years and a bit. So it's been up and down along the way. It's not plain sailing. I've been asked by a number of clients, what was it like when I did it? And I made this comment to them, and I said, look, it's a bit like standing on the edge of a cliff, looking over at the water and the rocks and seeing that there's nowhere to land, but knowing in your heart of hearts that there is. So you have to have this self-belief and then go forward and not look back. Now, that might be a bit, dramatic, what I've said, a bit, melodramatic if you want to say, but that's what I've said. And I've been asked by a number of companies to actually tell their agents and their franchise people that who take these risks. The first thing I think you've got to do is look at what your core business is and what you love and what you're good at. You've got what your special skills are. But there's no point really jumping off and trying to do what you're not good at or what you haven't done before. And in fact, you won't get a following easily. So you increase your risk. So starting your own business is all about risk management, if you really want to say it. The same as an astronaut leaves the capsule and goes out into the space with it tied to it by one thread. And I've read some books on astronauts, and don't worry, they get anxious too. Once you make that decision, then what you have to make sure that, is it something you're going to love to do? You've got to want to love, L-O-V-E, what you're going to do, not just like it. You've got to love it, because when you love it, you will get up early and you'll go to bed late and you'll think it and act it and speak it and read it. Got to do a lot of reading and your passion will be there. So that's the first thing. And if you've got a special skill, and in my case, it was communication. I guess that was my skill, training, coaching and communication, that little package. I was coaching about 30-odd businesses at the time and training them, and my communication skills, I was told, were very good. So I set out to focus on that area Now, John, when you focus on what you're good at, you usually do it pretty well. And you don't second guess yourself. You tend to come through with conviction and self-confidence, which people want.
Sorry, George, can I just ask a question?
Yes, please.
So, sorry, I'm cutting back a bit, but what I'm interested in, you spoke about that calculated risk.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about how do you define that risk and when do you do your actual jump?
Because okay, I'll do that.
Is there a good moment to jump, or is it when you get pushed by the company?
Well, that's good. That's a good question, John. Sometimes, is there a good moment to jump? Well, sometimes out of adversity, as you've heard me say before in your podcast, it's a famous saying of mine, if I can say it's famous. Out of adversity comes advantage. It's just at the time of the adversity, you don't yet know the advantage. So often people do you a favour. And so because they were going to shift me around with my family, et cetera, as I've explained, they actually did me a favour because I went to the senior manager at the time. I had a great relationship with him. And I said, his name was Rick Clark, and I said, look, Rick, I want to get some wisdom off you and some mentoring. I want to go into my own business. What do you think I should do? And he's fantastic. He was a captain in the military before he joined Celtics. He said to me, well, George, you'll finish up one day being 70, more than that now, and you'll wonder whatever happened if you hadn't done it. So you've got to sort of, life's a bit like that. You've got to take some risks. We all take risks. So what I did then to help the risk be as small as it could be, which I think is a good question you ask, is I put together a business plan. Now, I've been putting together business plans for about 35 businesses. So I had to sit down and put one together for me from zero. So a bit like a train leaving the station, it starts from zero and it gets going and might get to 100 Ks, 200 Ks, depending what country you're in. But so I had to forecast I forecast the first 3 years. Can't do much more than that, I don't think. After a year, you're really crystal balling anyway. So I forecast what I thought I could do and what type of businesses I could get as clients, what sort of income I would need, what sort of costs initially. And we used to call it at the Celtics, if I can give them credit for this, a CRTO statement. Now, that's really a funny acronym. It means capital required to operate. And not many people do this, but we were forced into this process to forecast the capital required to operate for a business. So I did it for me. And then I went, when I worked out how much I'd need for especially the first 12 months and then the second 12 months, I went to a couple of bank managers with a business plan that I'd written down and typed out, and I showed them, and they were quite shocked, actually. It's a bit of funny. It's quite funny, John. They said, we don't get many people come in here with a business plan. We just come and get people asking for money. I said, well, I'm a bit different, I guess. And they said, well, yeah. So it enabled me to get over the drawbridge and into the castle, I call it, because I had the equipment and the preparation to enable them to take a risk with me. So that's how it all started. And I think it's very important to invest. That's a good word in starting your own business, John. To invest time, effort, and your skills in putting together a business plan so that others can understand where you're going and what percentage of opportunity and success you might have.
But the question I want to ask about the business plan, because what I found when I started my own business is I drew up this beautiful business plan. It was all fantastic. I did the jump, got into the business, and things weren't as I anticipated. And things turned quite differently. So I had to quickly adapt as I went. So is that normal? Or
yes, it is.
Maybe my business plan wasn't good enough, or what do you say about that?
No. Well, that's. I think that's inevitable. I mean, it's like going on a holiday and all of a sudden the bridge is broken and you've got to divert, you've got to pivot, you've got to take action to change. Yeah, I mean, life's like that, John. It's a good point you raised. And I think you've got to set off like you do on any adventure, because that's what this is, really. you've got to set off on an adventure with a series of fallback positions, I'll call it. Plan A, B, C, whatever. We get to D if you want. But you have to have those and you have to take action quickly. One of the things that you find when you're running your own business, you've just alluded to it really, is you have to be decisive. You have to make decisions fairly quickly. I mean, you've got to stay the course. I mean, that's a really important thing. It's easy to give up quickly, and in fact, many small business people who've left a corporate find it difficult in the first 9 months, thereabouts, 6 months, 3, 6, 9, and give up just before they're about to be successful. It's a bit like building a building. You see, the top all the skyscrapers in the world have a foundation that takes just as long to build as it does above the ground. So you have to put the foundations down, and you have to be patient and stay the course. But if you don't put the foundations down, and in my case, John, and I don't know about yours, I joined various associations to network. I made sure my business circle I kept seeing them for a coffee or a plate of spaghetti or whatever. I made a point of that. Then one of the things I did, which I would have explained and helped others to do, was I actually sent out an open letter to a number of companies that I considered. It's interesting to sort of qualify it, really. An open letter to a number of companies I considered would be good clients for me. So I sort of selected about 20 of them. And I sent this letter to the person that I thought was the appropriate one from research. And then what I did, and this is the part that's difficult, really, you've got to pinch yourself a bit. Then what I did was allocated time when I was at my best, and usually that was after lunch, early afternoon for me, where I had not a script, but I had sentences, I had prompt bullet points, and I rang every one of them back. Now, they're quite shocked because not many people do that. So I rang them back just to make sure they had received the letter, and I used some techniques which I've alluded to earlier. My skills are in communication, and especially some very great communication toolboxes I've been fortunate to run into or open. One is Rudyard Kipling's 6 words you can't get a yes, no answer to. Now, that's a brilliant piece of poetry. And for those who haven't seen this before, it goes something like this. I'll do it slowly. I kept 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names are what and why and when and where and how and who. Now, if you ask questions beginning with any of those words, you cannot get a yes, no answer. But you have to be quiet when you ask the question and not answer them. You have to steer yourself to really be patient and let the other person think and answer them. So I did this. I rang up these people and I finished up getting 3 significant clients out of that, which I never expected to get. And then the other thing that happens which is interesting, John, is when your colleagues and network know that you've taken we'll use the word risk, the calculated risk to start your own business. Many people you don't know about admire your courage really quite significantly. And I had this happen to me where some people came to me and said, look, we'd like you to do this. Is this what you're doing? Yeah. I said, yes. And they knew of me, but not about my business so much intricately. And they introduced me to some clients they thought I could help. Now, that was good testimonial referrals, but they'd known me for years. They weren't really taking a risk in their eyes as much as I thought. So, yes, you've got to pivot, John. You have to. It's not all plain sailing, to take your point. And also coming back to what you probably thought, not everybody's cut out to run their own business, I can tell you. People close to me, I know about, they prefer to have people around them in a structure without the risk of capital worries and finance and legal and a whole range of things. They just prefer to get up, go to work every day and give their best, I might add, and use their skills, but not have the what would you call it, the concern, worry, whatever, of those other extraneous things.
So another question, you mentioned that decisive decision-making.
Yeah.
Can we dig a little deeper around that? What do you mean by decisive? Because it's quite different.
Yeah.
Because in corporate,
Yeah.
you do everything sort of by group decision, because
Yes.
you'll present a strategy to the management team or to the board. There'll be a lot of discussion around it, and eventually a decision will come through the process.
Yes.
But when you're an entrepreneur, you have to make there's no one else to speak to. Maybe your accountant or maybe your lawyer, but you left to make those decisions. Can you talk more about that and
I will.
that in a bit more detail?
No, that's a very good point, John. The worst person you can have sounds terrible what I'm going to say. How can I rephrase that? The most unfortunate person you should put in any position of advice is your spouse, because they want to help you and they feel like but they often haven't got the skills to do it. You've got to be very lucky to have somebody with the skills to do that. And then if they haven't, they feel terrible. They feel guilty. They feel stressed. They can't sleep. They worry about the business. I know about all that. It's cost me, a couple of relationships. So you have to choose your support group, which is what you're talking about, carefully, and you have to have one. So I chose a number of people that I could bounce ideas off, and they were very helpful. And often they wouldn't agree with me, I might add, but I can only tell you that from my perspective, being decisive, it means that you've got to have. We all know in life, men especially have a sixth sense, but they very rarely take it. I'm writing a book at the moment. I think the Stealth Bomb about men's mental health. Well, men have this sixth sense, often about issues, but they're loath to use it. I have no idea why. Perhaps it's a sign of weakness, but females use it all the time. They have intuition and they have a sixth sense, and they'll make decisions quickly. They're very good that way. And so I had to have a bit of a female side in me and make some quick decisions. And I suppose if you're a pragmatic person, and my ex-manager at the oil company told me once he thought I was a very pragmatic person. Well, that means you usually take out emotion and you stick to the facts. That's what I've worked out that is. So if that helps you to make decisions faster, I think that's useful. Otherwise, you sit on a picket fence and procrastinate. And you and I both know that gets you nowhere. So people don't see you as being a good leader. See, when you start your own business, John, you've got to be a leader of yourself. And then when you employ 1, 2, and 3 people, and I got up to 35, then you've got to be a leader of others and be decisive. See, they want to be led into the future by somebody who is a person of action. If you sit there and twiddle your thumbs and sit on a picket fence, then they think they're in trouble too, because they've backed the wrong horse, so to speak. They're giving up their life to work with somebody who can't make a decision. So you've got to make a decision, whether it's right or wrong. You've got to weigh that up. But it is very important.
I think you make a really good point there, George, about that procrastination and action, because just the fact that you're going forward and taking action leads to, so that action might not be 100% right, but if you don't take any action, nothing happens. But if you take something and you're sort of 80% right, and as you go forward, you adjust your process, so hopefully you get going in the right direction, eventually. Is that correct? Or
it is, because other things happen. You'd be surprised if you take, it mightn't be the right decision, but because as you rightly say, you go forward in that direction, you'll bump into somebody. It's really weird, provided you have look, I'm a big believer in being who you are, right? And I think you and I both know that. We've both seen that in our careers. I'm who I am. If you don't like me, that's bad luck, but that's who I am. Okay. And so after I was myself when I started, and after 9 months, I equaled my competitor's 12th year's turnover. How about that? In 9 months. Of course, he wasn't happy. He's a nice guy, but he couldn't work out how I did it. Well, I never went to any of his clients. They came to me. Some of his people knew I'd started out by myself, and the networks got going, and that's what happened. So, and it's a really good point, John. I'll just labour on for a second. One of the clients that I acquired said to me, can I run a marketing program for them in 3 weeks? Now, how about this? And I said, no. Oh, how about that? I've only started in business 2 months, and I said, no, I can't. I said, I put your products and people at risk. So I had to have these skills. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, you've got an international product in photography. Yeah, it happened to be Canon cameras. And I said, I'm sure they're world leader. So if I was to rush around now and put something together to help you, it would be half-baked and have holes in it, and I wouldn't want to do that because it wouldn't match the standard of your product, and you'd be put at risk. He said, how much time extra do you want? A bit like that. And I said, I want another 4 weeks. He said, okay, you got it. So you had to have conviction and self-belief and be forthright a bit. But you see, what I've just hopefully done for you then is I've given him a benefit-related piece of information saying, if you value your product and your business, then I want to do that for you because I don't want to put you at risk. So what I picked up early days was you have to influence change and influence business from their position, not yours. And once you do that, they love you. That's the word. They beat a path to your door, John. I promise you. Yeah, so we grew from 1 to 2, 3, 4 to 35. And I mean, one day this is what happened. One day I walked off the 7th green at Yarra Yarra, having only started my business, I don't know, about 8 months. And a divisional manager of a large Japanese company said, call me Monday. That's what he said. And I said, why? I won't say names. Why? And he said, because Bill Smith's joining us from another Australian car company and he'll need you. I didn't ask for any business. I just played golf, right? But this is one of the things you can do to help your business grow. You have to see golf's a great, it's a great insight window into people's personality, ethics, attitudes, a whole stream of behaviours, and you see it over 4 to 5 hours. So you see consistency or not, and that's what I got. That match business from a golf course, never asking, but the person saying to me after getting to know my consistent behaviour pattern, call me. Now that role, that client I had for 5 years, every division in Australia, and we launched a car for them as well. And at that stage, walking off that green to the 8th tee, I had no idea in my wildest dreams that was going to take me to the 1984 LA Olympics, help me negotiate a contract with Torval. No idea. So the biggest piece of advice I can give people starting their own business is be yourself. If you try to be somebody else, you will fail, and people will see it.
Because, George, I was quite interested in exactly what you're saying now, is be yourself. Even going back to when you spoke to your example about the camera guys.
Yeah.
And it's just when you are open and honest with them,
yep,
you start to develop trust because people can see and trust you. And
correct.
So that develops the relationship. Is that right? Am I
no question
understanding it correctly?
Yeah, no question. You see, you've got to have the courage of your convictions. So, see, he couldn't believe I was taking a big risk by saying no. Of course, I wanted his business, but not on the terms that he wanted me to do them, because I would put him and me at risk. So, part of the point you're making is they're having the ability, the communication skills, and the empathetic behaviour to put yourself in the other people's shoes and speak from their position. And I suppose what I'll use the word, we don't use it much these days, having the guts to do it. That's what you got to say, right? Having the intestinal fortitude to say, I don't care if I lose this business, but I mean it in his interests as well as mine. So that's what I did. And because of that, I got more of his business, I can tell you.
But then also in the other way, you can also turn it on its head, where you sometimes have to be pretty confident about your ability and make something happen.
Correct.
So for instance, I started a cheese business and I went out and through pure accident, I met someone and they said, can you make halloumi cheese? And I didn't even know what halloumi cheese was. but I was making 4 or 5 other types of cheeses. So I thought, in the back of my mind, I thought, I'm sure I can make halloumi cheese. So I said, yes. So he said, can you bring me a sample on Monday? So I went home and I got these massive cheese books, and I'd been to some cheese courses, and I was making quite a lot of different types of cheeses. So I had the basic foundation. I made a sample on the kitchen stove, some halloumi, and I took it to him on the Monday, and he tasted it, and he said, oh, that's fantastic. Can you deliver 300 kgs next Monday? So I said, yes, I can. I spent the whole week. We just about died in the process of doing it, but I delivered him 300 kgs the next Monday, and he became my biggest halloumi customer. So sometimes you have to take the chance and just jump at it.
My word.
If you don't do it,
yep,
you'll never get that chance again. It'll be out the window and gone. So I could have said, no, I can't do it, walked away, and I would never have seen him again.
Well, that's how about that's a very good story, John. I'll give you a slightly different one, but this is similar. My largest car client came in this day and came to me. I always went to them, and this guy said, "Can I shut the door?" And I thought, "Oh, we're in trouble. We've done something wrong," as you'd normally think. And I said, "Sure. So how can I help you?" And he said, "Look," he said, "this is classified, but we want you to launch a car for us. It's our first front-wheel drive car, and we're the last of the major 5 manufacturers." And I said, "But John," call him John. I said, "But John, I've never done that before." And he said, "We know that, but we like the way you think. So what do you think?" Now, I could have said, "No, I'm too scared. I won't do it." And I said, "Okay, you're on." Now, I launched a car on ice, with ice skaters, with famous entertainers from Australia, closed the whole of the Adelaide main street, and we had the whole of the entertainment. What do they call it over there? The festival theatre, I think they call it. Anyway, we launched a car on ice for the first time in the world. Now, work that out. And I'd never done it before in my life. It's a bit like your cheese story, isn't it? But I had to say yes, because he wanted me to do it. See, so that your man and my man had one thing in common. They both believed we could do it, John. So we must have given out via our eyes, body language, communication skills, ethics, whatever, and they would have researched us too, the fact that they wanted us to do it. See, because what I believe small business people, when you start your own business, you're in business to make others famous. That's how I've probably never said that enough in my life, but I made this guy at this company famous, and he got headhunted by another car company. But yeah, because nobody thought we could do it, you see, and we did. I think the other thing, John, which we may not have touched on, but I will because of the podcast, is setting up yourself with a brand. And I think it's important to have a brand that tells as well as sells, or conversely, sells as well as tells. And part of that is having a positioning statement that you have on your website, card, email, that says, in my case, strategies for success, building your brand, for instance. In other words, when you do business with me, this is what I do for you. If you have that on all your corporate communication, it acts as a silent influencer or salesperson, if I can use that, and you don't mention it, you don't have to, but it positions you in their eyes. Toyota, you have a great one in the world. They haven't changed it for 30 years, I think. Oh, what a feeling. You see, that's what you get when you buy one. Versus Nissan was Nissan know-how. Well, really, if you don't know how to build a car, you shouldn't be doing it. So they're speaking from their position, whereas Toyota are speaking from the buyer's position, a bit like BMW, sheer driving pleasure. Similar thing. So it's very important to position your brand so people feel comfortable. There's a little formula I have here, John, which you might like me to say. People have to feel comfortable plus, little plus sign, comfortable plus confident plus trust equals a wise decision. See, and I say the word a wise decision. Well, when people do business with you, when you've jumped off for corporate and started your own business, they invariably tell others what they're doing in life at parties and pub and barbecues and, I don't know, over golf or footy, whatever. And they need to feel they've made a wise decision, not a stupid decision. So I've learnt this little formula that goes, you've got to make them feel comfortable with your presence, plus confident with your knowledge, plus trust you with your time management and reliability, consistency. So they'll then make a wise decision to appoint you, and thereby hangs a tale. Because once you do that, they refer you to others. It's a domino effect. You can't stop it. It's like a runaway train, John, where every time I went to this Japanese car manufacturer in Fisherman's Bend, I'd be introduced to another manager of another division. And before I knew what was happening, I had every division in Australia, and I never asked for it. But they did all the work.
But I think, George, you make a really good point there, and that a lot of business is done in the passages.
Totally.
So you build that trust.
Yep.
And I know when I was in corporate and I needed lots of things done, there were certain suppliers we used that were really good. And I was confident if I gave them something, they'd go away and they'll deliver it.
Yep.
And I would be at the right standard and the right quality and on time. Or if they couldn't do it in a certain time, as you said earlier, they'll say to me, well, we can't do it in that, but we'll do it in that. And often I was happy to take that extended time. And I'd give them additional things, knowing that they may be slightly more expensive, but I was confident it was right.
Well, there you go, you see.
Because what you can't do is give work to people and then find that the quality isn't there, and then it leaves egg on your face, and you have all types of issues trying to explain to your boss why you spent all this money.
Yep.
And you've got this poor quality product. So, to me, it's really interesting that how you spoke about that.
Well, it happens. It's been happening to me for the last, 20 odd years as a corporate coach and mentor. I mean, I'm virtually, if you wanted to put it in inverted commas, a business doctor, if you want to call it that. It's a bit of a stretch, but I know that nobody will refer me unless they're confident that they're not taking a risk. It's really interesting what you're saying, John. See, I think when you start your own business from a corporate, as obviously, or just start up anyway, people don't understand this as much as they should. It's all about risk management. Are you taking the risk out of others by saying they want you? You have to take the risk out of when you employ people, so they will work with you. And not enough people understand this. So it's a big responsibility, isn't it? Taking a risk. I mean, you're putting at the moment. I'm proud of it. You know that I'm coaching and mentoring senior managers at a number of companies, and that means that they've let me loose with their men, with their people. You see, wow. So what a risk they take if I wasn't as what I say I am. So I'm proud of that. So you have to be I think the word that pops out from your brain and mine is authentic. That's what you have to be. And once you become through as authentic, then they see minimal risk. So therefore they say yes, and therefore they want to work with you. And it's a bit like there's a saying around Australia. I know it's an Australianism. Once you work for some companies, it's like being in the Australian cricket team. You'll never get out because they don't want to take a risk with you people. That doesn't say much for the selectors. Sorry about that. But that's a joke that what you and I know has been around for some years. So once you perform in that world, they just want you again because they reduces the risk. But one of the things that I think you've got to have to enable this to happen, John, is you've got to have some sort of ego, and it's okay to have an ego. You've got to keep it in check. That's obvious. I use this. You've got to know you're okay. Now, there's nothing wrong with knowing you're okay. When we brought up as kids, we're told to shut up and sit in the corner and behave yourself and don't do watch your P's and Q's. What I've said this to many people who've started their own business. You have to break out of the chrysalis and fly, or you've got to get out of the nest and fly. Once you've got your wings, you've got to fly. It's okay to do that, by the way. Because if you stay in your nest or your chrysalis, you'll die. Even mother birds, once the down is gone and the chicks have got wings, if they don't get out and fly, she'll push them out. because otherwise they'll die. So I think that's an important piece of philosophy in running your own business, in starting your own business. You've got to be prepared to fly, but be resilient and calm and have support mechanism around you. That's the biggest single growing factor in the world. I don't know whether you know that, John, is coaching and mentoring of business people is the fastest growing corporate consulting segment in the world. And it's in fact no longer there to fix people. It's there to support people and help them to grow. That's been a big change. So apart from having banks and legal things and having enough money and the right staff and having your right name and your right website and a positioning statement, and I'll give somebody a really good piece of advice if you'd like me to. When people start off, they invariably, because they don't know, they'll invariably go to a printer or to an artist to help them design their business name, cards, etc. And I've seen this that many times, it's quite sad. And they mean well, but they haven't got the right knowledge. So they'll come up with a pretty card or a pretty logo with no positioning statement, no reason to buy, but it looks pretty. And unfortunately, you need to go and look at strategy, get strategy, have a session on strategy first with a corporate coach or somebody who knows, so that then you brief the artist, then you brief the person to produce your corporate communication based on what will work for you to help you be successful, not on what looks pretty. Sorry, I'm being a bit pedantic about how I say it, but I've seen it so many times. So I now say to clients, whatever you do, don't you print anything or change anything until you show me first. And they say, why is that? And I say, because they haven't got the skills to do it. It's a bit like going to a cosmetic surgeon to have your leg amputated. Well, you wouldn't do it. So you've got to go to where people have the right information.
So you jump into your own business. You need to be authentic to reduce the risk of dealing with your customers. What other ways can you reduce that risk?
When you meet a potential new customer, the first thing I do, and I think people need to do, is find out, not tell them all about them, but ask them questions about what they want to achieve. What are their goals? What are their needs and wants, and what do they need to have assistance with? And once you do that, and then you submit your proposal with their objectives first, then your methodology, how you'll help them, and then lastly, the investment. I never use the word cost. The investment they need to invest in your services to enable that to happen. I find that once you come from their position, they quite get attuned to that. They find that quite amazing, really. You're not trying to sell them anything. You help. The simple thing you've got to do to win business is to help people to buy, not sell them anything. People hate to be sold, but love to buy. So what you've got to do is have a philosophy whereby you try to help them buy you by you trying to do what they need, not sell them what you want them to have. I mean, it's the oldest trick in the book is that you go to a car salesperson, that's why they rate low in ethics, and you want to go for a car, they'll try and sell you what they want you to have. No. The new breed of car salesperson is somebody who helps you to buy what you want, what you need, and they're the most successful. And when you do that, you get the best. You get usually least amount of price obstacles, and you get the most gross profit. And the people just want to tell others about you and beat apart your door. So it's a philosophical answer to your question. If I've answered it correctly, I hope I have.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I think it's been an interesting discussion, and even for me to hear, because I've started my business, different businesses,
yes,
and it's always been very interesting for me. And talking to you and pointing out, I look back myself and I can see a lot of mistakes I've made, and I think there's probably things I could have done a lot better.
Oh well, we all do.
But it's always hindsight afterwards. You look back and think, sure,
hindsight is brilliant, isn't it?
So maybe it would have been better if I'd met you 50 years ago.
Well, I've had a few people say that. But look, the final icing on the cake, if I could say this to people who are starting their business, is knowledge is power. Okay? Francis Bacon, famous Englishman. Knowledge is power. You have to stay up to date with knowledge. If you don't, you die on the vine. So people find you've got to go to conferences, you've got to read, you've got to see knowledge as an investment in your armory. And then you've got to have what I wrote today, you've got to have a silver bullet. And the silver bullet, in my opinion, when you run your own business, is to have what I call superstition that comes from Edward de Bono. You've got to have a point of difference over others. And in my case, John, you can't have anyone else. You get me, you see. That's my point of difference. Now, that's good and bad in a way, but at the moment, when I had my company with 35-odd people, yes, they had other choices. But I know I found something out. People want to deal with somebody they can like, trust and respect, and then they build loyalty. So that's a bit of a circle that goes around. So knowledge is power. And also, I think you've got to be proud. You've got to be proud how you portray yourself. It's easy to slip. Working from home's easier to slip, I'm sure. You've got to be careful what you wear, the clothes you wear, the shoes you wear, how you're groomed, how you arrive. Time management at the moment is critical, and people in small business, I know, John, are stretched for time. So you have to be tough on time, or time will be tough on you. You've got to learn to say no. See, I had my daughter ring 10 minutes before this podcast about coming around on Friday for the grand final. I said, I've got to go, darling. I'll ring you back tonight. She said, no, talk to me tomorrow. I had to say that because otherwise I could have talked to her and then said, sorry, John, I'm running 20 minutes late. Well, you would have gone, what? So you've got to have respect. When you manage your time, and that enables you to listen to other people, builds respect for them, and they love it. When you don't have good time management, you're showing them disrespect, that you really don't rate them high and they're not worth much at all. I hope that's been a help to a lot of people, John, to help them jump off into space and be a business astronaut, as I call it, because it takes a lot of courage to fly into space with a limited amount of resources and have a go. As they say in Australia, have a go, you mug. It's a good saying.
George, thanks very much. It's been great talking to you. And you've really given some great nuggets of information, and I'm sure that I even use myself. There's a few things there that I thought, that's a great idea, and I'm sure I'll apply it in my own business at the moment. So thanks for your time this evening, and we appreciate talking to you.
My pleasure.